Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. I am back here. It is Monday night after a pair of two Purdue wins over the long weekend for some of us. Boilermakers took down Nebraska on Friday night before a wild and dramatic win over Michigan State in the Breslin Center in a Monday matinee. We'll talk about both of those games today. Thoughts from the week, thoughts from those games, looking at just kind of where Purdue is, who's playing well, who's not, all of that good stuff. We'll look ahead to this upcoming week with two more games left and answer a couple of your questions on the way out. Plenty to talk about. Purdue's 17-1 now. They remain third in the AP poll for this week. Probably going to need help to move up. Not that it means a thing. If you're Purdue right now, you are content where you're at. Just keep on winning. Nobody saw this coming, and nobody saw this coming at all, but it's been a lot of fun. Got a lot to talk about here today. If you don't already, be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter. That's at Boilers Beyond. So much to talk about. Football's still going. Football's still adding guys out of the transfer portal. I've had a couple over the weekend. That never stops, so be sure to follow along there. Plus, of course, tweets before, during, and after every basketball game. Lots to talk about, so come join the conversation there. And be sure to subscribe so that you do not miss an episode wherever you get your podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Purdue got the weekend started Friday night, 73-55 win over Nebraska. Purdue completed the season sweep of the Huskers behind Fletcher Loyer's career-high 27 points. Nebraska came into this one. It's funny, you look at these two games here, and the two teams who played Purdue very differently from a defensive standpoint. And Purdue wins both these games. Despite that, the teams took almost opposite approaches. Nebraska tried to take away Zach Edey at all costs, and they kind of did, to whatever extent you consider 12 points and 12 rebounds to be taking him out of it. It's just the Zach Edey effect. Purdue goes 11 for 29 from 3, and that really is enough to lift them to victory. Nebraska, they hung in there a little bit in the first half, but ultimately that one was inevitable. And then the one that, of course, everyone's here to hear me talk about just happened. Went final about 3.5 hours ago. Purdue 64, Michigan State 63, in a game that, if you look at social media afterward, both fan bases think that the officials were out to get them. Both fan bases think that the officials were, biased towards the other side. Again, I don't really ever subscribe to that stuff. Big Ten officiating is what it is. It's not perfect. It's never going to be. But I think, Purdue leads the country in free throw discrepancy, I think. There's only so many fouls you can call. Purdue, I don't think Purdue's got too much to be upset about in terms of officiating in that one, nor do I think Michigan State does either. Look, it was a really good basketball game. It felt eerily similar to the Ohio State game that just happened a few weeks ago in Value City Arena, where Ohio State got out to an early lead, Purdue battled back. It was a close game at halftime and then back and forth throughout the second half. That's kind of what happened here, only it was Purdue with the early lead. Purdue got up 24-11, and then Michigan State went on a 19-3 run to really change the game and turn this one into a dogfight. Zach Edey gets the game winner with a little over 2 seconds left for Purdue. He had 32 points, a new career high for him. And again, talking to the difference in how Nebraska and Michigan State played Purdue defensively, whereas Nebraska was more than happy to give up a wide open 3-point look at the expense of making sure Zach Edey didn't get a one-on-one touch in the post. Michigan State was giving Zach Edey every one-on-one touch that he wanted. It wanted to make sure that Purdue didn't get a number of good looks from three, and they succeeded with that. The problem is, when you have 32 points, 17 boards from Zach Edey, well, it makes things a little more difficult. The guy's clearly the National Player of the Year frontrunner. Having that performance in a standalone game on a national audience, well, that certainly helped as well. He didn't do it single-handedly. 14 of Fletcher Loyer's 17 came in the second half. I'm telling you, he has been remarkable lately. I'll get to him momentarily. Just a massive win. You know, I tweeted last night before this game, you know, I'm really interested to see how Purdue handles this, because I'm trying to stay cautiously optimistic with this Purdue team. You know, I'm trying to make sure that I'm fully processing what's going on here, because to some degree it feels like they're flying way too close to the sun, because they're just that good. They're 17-1. Never in a million years did I see this coming. So, you know, I figured, look, Breslin's a really tough atmosphere. Tom Izzo is going to throw a lot at Purdue, especially their freshman guards, and he did, especially early on in the game. Got to Braden Smith a little bit, but, you know, Purdue handled the challenge. It was a good atmosphere. The place is always loud. The students were into it. Ask Zach Edey, ask Fletcher Loyer. They're well aware. Just a massive win, especially when you look at the Big Ten standings. Knocking Michigan State down to 3 losses. Purdue remains at 1 loss. Back-to-back years now. Martin Luther King Day has been very good to Purdue. Last year, a double OT win in Champaign. This year, a last-second win in East Lansing. Really good stuff for Purdue on Martin Luther King Day. You know, obviously, the start of the conversation, you do have to at least acknowledge that Purdue did face some injuries here. Nebraska didn't have Sam Griesel or Juwan Gary. That's 2 of their starters in that game. I think Purdue probably knew the game was won before it even started. If we're being honest here, you saw Purdue run away with that one. It wasn't close. Derek Walker's legit. I don't think Purdue's going to miss seeing Casey Tominaga, but, you know, Nebraska's kind of limited in what they can do. They got some interesting decisions to make out there after this season as it pertains to their head coaching position. They just paid Scott Frost all that money. I don't know if they're going to be dying to pay a buyout for Fred Hoiberg, but, man, they're struggling. And then against Michigan State, Malik Hall didn't play. That was kind of the will he, won't he coming into the game. And it sounds like he could be out for a while. Purdue plays Michigan State again a week from Sunday in Mackey Arena. Really quick turnaround time on that. I don't think that's ideal for either party. I don't think that's good in general. But Malik Hall may or may not be ready to go for that game. You don't put asterisks next to these wins. Let me, repeat that a million times. It's, as Gene Cady always said, it's not necessarily who you play, but when you play them. And Purdue got, not that it really would have mattered with Nebraska probably, but it certainly didn't hurt anything that Michigan State was without Malik Hall. You just can't say enough about Zach Edey. The presence he feels, the presence he impacts onto the game. A game like Nebraska, where they are doing everything they can to stop him, and he's still able to put up 12 and 12. I mean, that's not normal. That's not normal at all. He was really good. And against Michigan State, as I said, that's National Player of the Year material. That's the type of game that wins you that award. One of my friends sent me a screenshot of one of the betting apps after today's game, and let's see what he was. He's minus 360 to win the Wooden Award at this point. So it's pretty remarkable. just seeing where he is, how his game has progressed, and to see him score 32 points in a game where, man, he left some shots out there. He missed some shots that he normally makes. He only shot 50% from the field, which could be quite a bit worse, but he was spectacular. But Purdue doesn't win that game without Fletcher Loyer. Freshmen are not supposed to do what he does. Freshmen don't go on the road 2 times in their first 7 Big Ten games and kind of put the team on their back and will them to victory. And that's what he did at Nebraska. That's what he did against Michigan State. Purdue has something really, really special in him. You look at his game. Purdue's had a lot of good shooters in the past decade, really in Matt Painter's tenure. But you look at the guys that are that pure shooter: Ryan Smith, Kendall Stevens, Dakota Mathias, Ryan Klein, Sasha Stefanovic. Who am I forgetting in there? Maybe I'm forgetting somebody. But, all those guys were really good three-point shooters. But none of them have the ability to score off the bounce and score at all 3 levels the way that Fletcher Loyer does. He's really, really playing well. He was playing well early on this season, and he wasn't shooting a tremendous percentage from 3-point range. Now he is. He is up to, what do we got here? He's up to 37% from 3. That was down at like 31% at the end of non-conference play. He's been really good lately. I don't think you can say enough about what he's done. And as you project with him, he's so smart. He's such a savvy player. He's always going to shoot really high volume. He's a confident player. But man, there's so much to like about what he's going to do at Purdue. They haven't had that 3-level scorer that he is in some time. And you saw how important he is to this year's team now. Look at when Michigan State went on that run in the first half. It was when Fletcher Loyer was off the court, and it was when Braden Smith was off the court. Those two got into foul trouble early, and while it wasn't the worst game for Brandon Newman, David Jenkins really held his own. I thought he did a nice job at, kind of helping Purdue float and tread water a little bit. But Purdue's at their best when those two, Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith, are on the court. It's like I tweeted this during the Nebraska game. In the NCAA tournament, Purdue needs to have those two on the floor as much as possible. They're that important. Monday wasn't Smith's best game, but regardless, he had some poise to him. He was making plays in a tough atmosphere as a point guard. That's not easy to do. Freshman, being a point guard in the Big Ten, starting as a true freshman, that's hard to do. What he's able to do getting in the lane and with the pick and roll game, getting the ball in the air to Zach Edey, that opens up so much for this team. This is a really good backcourt tandem Purdue has. Of course, sometimes fans can focus in on what's not going well, even when Purdue is 17-1. And this isn't just Purdue. This is all fans. And of course, right now, the guy receiving the criticism is Ethan Morton. It's no secret. He's struggled from 3-point range on the season. He's shooting just 24% from 3 on the season. That's far from what was expected this year. This is a guy who last year shot 44% from 3. So, I think to some degree, the truth is in the middle here. But the stats don't lie. He's really struggled. Michigan State let him shoot a little bit. He went 0 for 3 from deep. And I think some of those doubts are starting to creep in to the rest of his offensive game. How do you snap that? I don't really know. I'm no psychologist. I'm no sports psychologist, but Right now, something's off with Ethan Morton on the offensive end. He's better than he's indicating right now, but the problem is he is your best defender. That's your best perimeter defender, and I don't think that's really arguable. His length helps. His basketball IQ helps. He's a good post feeder. He's probably the best on Purdue's offense at feeding the post, which, as you know, is critically important. He's a good free throw shooter. He does a lot of the little things well, but when you aren't making those threes, you do become a little bit of a hole on offense that, it's not as easy for you to do what Purdue wants to do when you have a guy out there who the other team doesn't have to respect as a shooter. I don't know how he snaps out of it. You're going to see people say, oh, Purdue's got to bench him. Purdue can't start him. Well, who do you start then? I mean, there's no perfect situation here. If there's a big concern for Purdue right now, I think it probably stems in the fact that you only really feel great about two of Purdue's guards on offense. David Jenkins Jr. has been a stable presence, but, he's shooting 30% from the field, 24% from three. That's not very good. Brandon Newman is really up and down. He had a great game against Rutgers scoring the ball, but then you get times like against Nebraska, he checks into the game and forces two shots right away. And that's not really what Purdue needs him to do. Not when you have a guy like Zach Edey in the middle. So there are struggles everywhere in the backcourt to some degree, besides the two freshmen, which is just remarkable. I think, Purdue's gonna see if Ethan Morton can snap out of this. You have to. He's too important to not, let him get out of this a little bit, because he's taking good shots. I mean, they're wide open. He's not forcing the issue too badly, but going to be important to monitor without a doubt. And the same goes for Brandon Newman. If he can get out there and eliminate some of the mental mistakes that tend to happen, there's more playing time to be had there. Now, 4 years in the system, is that reasonable to expect? I don't know. I'll let you be the judge of that. Speaking of struggles, Trey Kaufman-Renn could really use a good performance. It was not a great game for him against Michigan State on Monday. He was limited to 3 points, picked up 3 fouls and turned it over twice. 3 minutes, 3 fouls, 2 turnovers for him in those 3 minutes. No points for him. He's been struggling lately. And this is, of course, another guy who's a freshman getting his first taste of Big Ten action. It's not been, the start that he hoped for. He's looked good at times this year. I think it's good for him that Minnesota's coming up, because he had a really nice game against Minnesota the first time Purdue played. Maybe that's something where he can get some confidence going. Maybe it's somewhere that he can, simplify things a little bit. It feels like he's pressing right now. And of course, for a freshman in the Big Ten, it's quite easy to do that. But, it's not something right now where Purdue feels great about it when Zach Edey's off the floor. And it's going to happen. Zach Edey's going to have to come off the floor at some point in a game. He can't play all 40. If he gets in foul trouble, then the need gets expedited. Trey Kaufman-Renn's gonna snap out of this, I would think. But again, another area where Purdue just needs someone to get some confidence going. I thought Caleb First's energy was really big for Purdue late in that game against Michigan State. He's a guy, again, Purdue struggled in that late first half, early second half. But when Purdue was kind of bringing that game back and Purdue was getting that game back into their hands, Mason Gillis was struggling to get rebounds. Michigan State had a bunch of offensive rebounds from that spot. Purdue goes to Caleb first. He knocks down a big corner three. He knocks down some free throws. What did he knock down there? 3 for 4 at the foul line. 8 points on 3 field goals is good. 6 boards. He had a good game. Caleb first had a really positive game for Purdue. Played 28 minutes. That's a lot. But his energy is critically important. And I think the final thing to talk about from this week, it's not often that you go on the road and shoot 16 for 18 from the free throw line. It's really not often that you have your freshmen combined to go 7 for 7 at the foul line, and then your big guys in First and Edey, your 2 tallest players, combined to go 9 for 11 from the foul line. That's how you win games. Purdue won this game with only 5 guys scoring, That doesn't happen often. That's probably not a recipe that you want to try to replicate too much, but 32-17, so 49 of your 64 points were from Zach Edey and Fletcher Loyer. That can be good, that can be bad, but Purdue won this game in a really gritty fashion. They only turned it over 9 times. I think that was really positive. It's not often they get out-rebounded, and if there's an area where you want to view as a negative, I think that's certainly it. But Purdue pulled off a heck of a win. And now as they move forward, they have a couple of games this week left. They play Minnesota on Thursday, a 7 p.m. tip up at the barn. Then they come home for a Sunday afternoon game against Maryland. Couple things here. Purdue's looking for a season sweep against Minnesota. Trips to the barn are never going to have Purdue fans feeling well. Of course, we don't talk about what happened there in 2010. 2019, Purdue lost a game up there that they had no business losing. Carson Edwards went like 6 for $1 million from the field. They ended up winning the Big Ten still, but it complicated things. That's never going to have Purdue fans feeling great, but Purdue blew them out the first time they played. Zach Edey out-rebounded Minnesota by himself. Purdue should win this game. Minnesota's not very good. They just got run off the floor by Illinois this evening. They've got 2 good players. They got 2 really good players. Jamison Battle, Dawson Garcia. Those are the 2 guys who scare you. Let's not forget, Dawson Garcia had 25, 26 points against Purdue in the tournament up at Mohegan Sun when he was on North Carolina. So he's a guy who's capable of having a big performance. Jamison Battle, same deal. He shot the ball well against Purdue the first time. I expect Purdue to try to slow him down a little bit, but this is a game Purdue should feel good about their chances going in. Just, again, limit turnovers. Don't let Minnesota get second chances, and you should be in great shape. Looking at Sunday, out of all the teams in the conference, I've probably watched Maryland the least at this point. I watched the majority of their game with Iowa on Sunday, but, they didn't play great, I don't think. They turned the ball over quite a bit. They've got some names that are familiar, but it's not like it's a real constant group. They had plenty of turmoil there the last couple years of Mark Turgeon. This will be the first time ever that Matt Painter and Kevin Willard have coached against each other. Jameer Young's a good player for them. He's a guy out of Charlotte. Purdue had some interest Purdue had some interest in him out of the portal this past spring before getting David Jenkins Jr. I'd expect Ethan Morton to guard Jameer Young. Dante Scott's been around a while, but they don't shoot the 3 ball fantastic. They turn it over quite a bit. I don't know how they'll guard Zach Edey. I don't know how Kevin Willard plays guys like that. I don't know how many of those guys he's seen, but I think this is a favorable couple games for Purdue. It's the Big Ten. Anything can happen. I'm still of the opinion that there's going to be a game that Purdue loses this season where we all say, what the hell? Just a game that makes no sense. I personally, coming into the year, I thought it might happen against a mid-major opponent in a bye game or against Davidson, something like that. I really was semi-convinced that was going to happen. Clearly, I was wrong. But, for Purdue and Purdue fans, you hope I'm wrong about this too. At some point, Purdue's going to lose a game that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't think Rutgers was that. I think Rutgers is better than that. But it's going to be interesting to see. Purdue's at 6-1. They're in great shape in the Big Ten. More on that here in a couple minutes. But you just have to be really happy with where Purdue is. They have 2 games here. Then they go into a really difficult stretch, if you ask me. But, after that win at Michigan State, to a certain extent, all feels possible. Ken Pom now has Purdue going 16-4 in the Big Ten. That's a lot to ask, but Purdue should feel very good about where it is. All right, had a couple of questions here on Twitter. As always, you're free to submit questions at Boilers Beyond on Twitter. Send them my way. We'll talk about them on the show. And off the top, what are the chances that Zach Edey returns to Purdue next season? And this question was submitted before the Michigan State game, but now it feels even more relevant after he had 32 points and 17 rebounds. Look, this could be the first test to see how functional Purdue's NIL situation is. And, before folks tweet at me, yes, I'm aware that there are some complications to foreign-born players and players who reside out of America on this. Come on now. There are no rules to name, image, and likeness. It's clear as day. No one's enforcing anything, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So there are no guarantees that a strong NIL deal would lure Zach Edey back to Purdue. You look at 2 situations in the Big Ten here after last season. It was rumored that Illinois had around $1 million ready for Kofi Coburn to come back. He didn't take it. He decided to go pro. I have no earthly idea what he's doing now, but he's not at Illinois. And they allegedly had $1 million on the table for him. Then if you go east a little bit, it's no secret that Trace Jackson Davis got quite a bit of money from Indiana's NIL collective to return to Bloomington for another year. I don't know what that number is. I've heard half a million. I've heard $250,000, but no doubt Trace Jackson Davis is making some serious money. So it doesn't guarantee anything. There's no guarantee that Purdue puts a number on the table and Zach Edey automatically says yes. I think the way the season plays out could mean something. We sit here on January 16th with, 7 weeks left in the regular season and then conference tournament, something like that. At this rate, if he keeps playing at this level, he's going to win the National Player of the Year award. He'll be Big Ten Player of the Year, National Player of the Year. What else is there for him to do? That's the question. Purdue just saw this a couple years ago with Carson Edwards, where his stock was never going to be higher than it was after that NCAA tournament performance. Again, I don't know where he's playing. Clearly, it's not an NBA thing. I think he's in Turkey, maybe. So it's not always about the next level. It's about when you have done what you can do to get yourself ready for that next level and to maximize your value at that next level. I don't know the guy. I don't know Zach Edey. I think I know that he's either a second-round pick or undrafted in the NBA. They don't like guys like that. They don't like guys that don't move very well. It's a garbage brand of basketball, but it's what the NBA is, and that's why I don't watch it. It's not changing, though. The NBA doesn't utilize traditional bigs the way college basketball does. Back to the question, though, what are the chances? I have no idea how to handicap that. I don't know what his goals are. I don't know how important it would be to, see it out, play all 4 years. I don't know how. We'll see what Purdue does. Do they win the Big Ten? What do they do in the NCAA tournament? Does that matter? I don't know. But I think Purdue needs to be prepared with something to put on the table to get him back for a 4th season. Because when you look at it, however this season turns out, whatever happens from January 16th to that Monday night in April when a champion's crowned, while I don't know that Purdue's going to be there, how far do they get? Regardless of those answers, Zach Edey returning is going to be the difference between Purdue coming into next season as a preseason top 25 team and someone in that Big Ten contender conversation, and Purdue being a preseason top 5 team and someone that folks are saying, could win the national title. That's what's at stake, whether Zach Edey returns or not. Then a second one, talking about the Big Ten, how many wins will it take to win the conference? The listener says most years I would say 15, but is 13 or 14 going to do it this year? And they refer to the parity in the league where it feels like anyone can beat anyone. And yeah, it certainly feels that way. It's certainly possible. I went back and looked at, ever since the Big Ten went to 20 league games, there have been 4 seasons. One of those was the COVID year, so take that for whatever it's worth. But last season, 15-5, it was split between Wisconsin and Illinois. They went 15-5. Purdue was 14-6. In the COVID season, Illinois went 16-4. Michigan went 14-3. And you'll remember the whole complication from winning percentage and yada yada, whatever. Illinois went 16-4 in 2021. 2020, it was a 3-way tie at 14-6 atop the league. And then in 2019, Purdue and Michigan State tied at 16-4. So anywhere from 14 to 16 has been needed to win it in recent years. To a certain extent, and it sounds, completely homer to say this as we're only 7 games into the conference schedule, but it feels like to a certain degree Purdue can determine how many wins it takes to win this thing. I think Purdue is the one that can set it at 15 or above. Right now, most teams have played 7 games. A few of them have only played, I guess about half of them have only played 6 still. Purdue has 1 loss. Rutgers and Michigan have 2. And then, you have a bunch with 3. So, assuming there are losses to be had out there, right now it looks pretty bleak that better than 15-5, that anyone besides Purdue could finish better than 15-5. And I think that's probably where I would pencil Purdue in at right now, is that 15-5. They could certainly finish higher. They could certainly finish lower. But I think that's probably the number that teams should target if they want to, try to have a share or win it outright. I think that 15 number sounds about right this year. I think when you look at the league, though, it's interesting to try to find who the big contenders are. Purdue's established themselves up there. I think Rutgers is legit. They just had a really nice win over Ohio State the other night. I need to pull up their schedule. They don't play Purdue again, so that helps Rutgers. That also probably helps Purdue. But, they still have plenty of tough games as I look at this. Starting Thursday, they go to Michigan State. Michigan might be legit. I don't know what to make of them. They lost a crazy one at Iowa the other night, but Hunter Dickinson's tough. Jet Howard's really good. Purdue goes up there in a week and a half. That's going to be a really tough game. Illinois is playing well, as is Iowa, although Iowa's defense will always give me a little bit of pause. Wisconsin's not looking as good, although Tyler Wall's out. Ohio State's kind of fallen off. Looking at the race, I think if you're Purdue, you need to look at Rutgers, Michigan, Illinois, and start hoping for some losses there. I think those might be your three biggest threats to winning a Big Ten regular season title. That's all I've got for this week. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'll be back after that Sunday game against Maryland. We'll break down the latest happenings with what happened there. By that point, we'll be 9 down in Big Ten play with 11 to go. We'll almost be halfway home. Time flies, man. It really does. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Tweet me questions for next week's episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss anything. Until next time, guys, keep enjoying college basketball season. It is fantastic. We are just getting in to the heart of it. It's great stuff. Take care, and I will talk to you Sunday night.